What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Real Me In, a movie podcast where you didn't really ask for it, but hey, we're going to give it to you anyways. This is a podcast where we talk about anything, everything, and, well, anything about movies. I'm one of your co-hosts, Chase Lee, and hey, guys, listen, if you're searching for another podcast, a movie podcast on the interwebs, and you came to this one, hopefully you can stick around and join us and just join in the conversation of what you love the most to talk about, which is movies. This is episode 254, and we had a technical glitch, if you will. If you're new to the show, welcome. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. But if you are new, what we typically do is we'll go over some movie news, some movie trailers that drop throughout the week, and commentate on them for you guys. And then we'll have our review or reviews of movies that come out on said weekend and box office results to accompany that. Like I said, this is episode 254. There will be no news this week. We had a technical glitch and it cut off recording, and then it kicked up another recording, so there was two parts. I don't like doing that, so we're just going to start with the trailers, and we're not going to waste any time. We're just going to jump right into it because we kind of have to go. We have to, get a move on with our lives. But before we get into the trailers, Joel, are you quite upset about our wonderful glitch that we had?
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, internet.
I know.
Internet services.
Internet is the worst. And I think from this point on, I'm not going to record live anymore. So I've learned my lesson. All right, so jumping into the trailers this week, and this actually works out for the better because the trailers are way more interesting to talk about than the news. The news was there, but the trailers is where the meat is at. So the first trailer that we're going to talk about is the remake, the reboot, reimagining of Dumbo, the animated Disney version from way back in the day. It's one of the older ones. And if you don't know what Dumbo is, I have an IMDb plot summary here, so here you go. We have a young elephant whose oversized ears enable him to fly, helps save a struggling circus, but when the circus plans a new venture, Dumbo and his new friends discover dark secrets beneath its shiny veneer. And so this one comes from Tim Burton. And, it stars, Colin Farrell, Ava Green, Michael Keaton, Danny DeVito. It's got a pretty nice little stat cast. To be honest with you, Dumbo isn't, like, my favorite, animated Disney film. Joel and I grew up in the 90s, and so we kind of have, like, a really nice understanding of these movies, whether they be from the early 90s or even older ones. We've seen a good amount, so to speak. And so, this trailer, visually, it has the kind of Tim Burton flair. I like his production. Whoever he hires for, like, costumes and production design are always on point. Tim Burton movies, typically for me, even if they are, half-baked or really just not delivered well, they still visually have a kind of this, like, gothic punk look that, works for the most part, or when he does something like a Big Fish, and it kind of does more old, older decade type of clothing and production design. He's always on point, and that's what this trailer is. It's more of a visual feast rather than, hey, I'm really interested in the story. I'm not saying that Dumbo is a bad character to do. It's just, it looks fine. And I was telling Joel this earlier, like, I think it's just because I've been burned by other Disney remakes and live action, reboots or whatever. But this looks fine. It is weird to see Danny DeVito in here, because we were discussing earlier that all I see from him now is just Frank from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like his disgusting character. So it's just weird to see him in a movie. And of course, Michael Keaton and him with the whole Batman reunion, that's fun. And then it seems like Colin Farrell is just in every single movie that is set in the 50s, 40s, 30s, and 20s. So he has that look, and I can't be more excited for it because I like Colin Farrell. But the movie overall, trailer-wise, if you're trying to get me excited, it doesn't really do it for me. So, Joel, you pretty much feel the same way, right?
Yeah, I mean, it looks fine. I don't remember Dumbo very well. It's one that I saw in early childhood, but didn't really revisit a lot, as much as I did, say, Aladdin or whatever after it came out. Beauty and the Beast. Pinocchio was my favorite of that era. It was the year before I think Dumbo came out. So, it looks fine. It looks visually pretty. It doesn't look as overproduced as something like Aladdin or the Nutcracker, recently. So, certainly just it looks slightly better suited to his sensibilities than Alice in Wonderland did, which I hate that movie. I think he did a horrible job with that, but we'll see. We'll see for sure. Our next trailer is Fighting with My Family. This is a WWE production, and it's about a young girl in Britain who aspires to be a WWE wrestler, and to that end, she goes with her brother along that path until they get separated, and he doesn't make it, she does. I wasn't impressed at all by this trailer. It's my least favorite trailer of the week, just to give that away. I think that it's basically chopped in half between really corny comedy and really syrupy drama, and it doesn't work at all. The Rock is a big draw here because he's a producer, I think, on the movie. I would be surprised if he wasn't. And he's going to have a cameo, obviously, as sort of a caricaturized version of himself. It's going to have a lot of cameos, I suspect. But yeah, I didn't laugh. I didn't really think it didn't really draw my attention in terms of the drama that they're attempting. It just looks very weak to me. What do you think?
I guess this is where we'll differ. I think
Okay.
the comedy, oddly enough, it worked, because I was expecting to just not like it, because it came off as corny. Like, it starts out with like the jokey stuff, and I guess as the trailer went on, like, the jokey stuff started to work for me, and I also thought maybe, yes, the drama was not played up as much as the comedy, but I think this is one of those situations where maybe the trailer is just kind of like a mismarketing, mishap, if you will, and this is going to be a nice blend of the two genres. I'm hoping that's the case. I mean, writer-director Stephen Merchant, he always
I
seems...
didn't know that he directed it. Okay.
Yeah, he always seems like the type of guy to me that would not really take a true life story like this and just turn it into a wacky comedy. I think he's going to have a little bit of heart in there as well, and maybe this is just mismarketing, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the movie is just straight up just a goofy slapstick comedy, but I think there's going to be a lot more meat to it, and I'm hoping that's the case. But I'm not going to disagree with Joel in terms of, like, that's how the trailer is structured. It's very wacky comedy, syrupy drama. Can't disagree with him, but I did laugh at some of the bits, and it might be one of those movies that has a lot more heart than we're, looking at. But as far as the trailer goes, I liked it. I didn't love it or anything, but it's a movie that was not on my radar, but I kind of want to see it now. So I don't know. That's just where I'm at. So this next trailer, also another movie that was not on my radar until Joel sends it over in the notes. I'm like, okay, let me check this out. And this one's called The Informer. And this one comes out next March. And this one is about an ex-convict working undercover, intentionally gets himself incarcerated again in order to infiltrate the mob at a maximum security prison. That is a mouthful. But this one stars Joel Kinnaman as the title character. We have Rosamund Pike. We also have Clive Owen, and we have Common. What a stacked cast. And you're probably thinking to yourself, like, oh, okay, the cast is good. The premise sounds a tad generic, but, it could have potential. And when you watch the trailer, you're anticipating like a Nicolas Cage or like John Travolta, like B-level action movie that like comes out every single week. You're like, oh, it's one of these movies again. But to be quite honest with you, I like the trailer. And I think it's because of the cast, to be honest with you. I think Joel Kinnaman is a tad underrated. He doesn't get as many opportunities to shine, but I think he kind of has that strong, stern type of personality to where he could pull off being like either a cop or a convict pretty well. So I think that's great casting, as well as playing a great yet slimy politician in House of Cards. He can do it all, and so I've always been impressed by him. But when you nab someone like a Clive Owen and Rosamund Pike, like, it seems like this movie is going to have a lot more to it than the trailer's leading on. In a good way, not a bad way. And so, yeah, I like the trailer. And if I were to get sent to a screening for this, I would actually be excited for it and not dread it. So, just kind of like one of those like tight little, suspenseful thrillers, and I kind of liked it, man. It was if you're talking about in terms of structuring of a trailer, it is edited pretty well. So that's my kind of spin on it.
Well, I think it looks excellent. It's very smart that they went the route of selling it from a producer of Sicario in the Town.
Yeah.
Because honestly, it looks to be in that league to me. I think that this one's going to be character based primarily, instead of just about the plot. I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of interesting things to say about the sort of the moral place that he finds himself in. As an informer, and it just looks excellent to me. I think that this has a real shot of being one of the better movies of earlier next year. I like the cast a lot. It's great. Looks like they're all doing solid work. So yeah, really excited for this. You know what I'm also excited for? Our next movie, which is Pokemon Detective Pikachu. This is the first ever live-action Pokemon movie, in general, not even in theaters, just in general. There's never been one, even for direct-to-video. And it's also the first theatrically released Pokemon movie, in wide release, at least, since Pokemon 3 back in 2001. And that feels like a long time ago, because... Wow, that's 17 years. But this one stars Ryan Reynolds as the voice of Pikachu. This is a variation of the character called Detective Pikachu based on a video game series, or I think maybe a series, maybe just one video game, I'm not sure, based around this character who goes around, I guess, solving crimes. I'm not entirely sure. I used to be really super duper into Pokemon, and although, weirdly enough, not so much the video games, and I kind of lost track of those somewhere around the early 2000s. So I'm not entirely sure what the premise is. I'm assuming that's what he does. It would make sense considering his name. Anyway, this one stars Justice Smith as well as a kid who has this particular Pikachu attached to him. This is a world where Pikachu or Pokemon are real. They are, I think it's set in the future, and they're basically just kind of companions of humans, and so he gets mixed up with somebody else, and who has another Pokemon. I can't remember who that person is played by, but you also got Ken Watanabe randomly as, I think, a detective of some sort. I honestly don't. They don't really go into the plot in this trailer. They really just kind of set the tone. And for me, the tone looks fun. It looks really laid back. It looks, Ryan Reynolds sounds like he's having a lot of fun in this kind of role. It's neat seeing a lot of Pokemon put into this sort of context of live action based CG creations, especially the horde of Bulbasaurs that we see at one point. It's really neat. And so I just think that this looks really fun. It's from the director of the first Goosebumps, and I like that movie. So it's, I think, what they did last in terms of live action movies. And so I think that it looks really solid. I have not talked to Chase about this though, so I don't know what his thoughts are. Chase, go ahead.
So as an avid Pokemon fan, and I say avid because, my God, if you were to tell me that it didn't look like a black market like trade on the school buses in 4th grade, like trading Pokemon cards on it, then you'd be lying to yourself. That is what we did, and Pokemon was a part of my life. I still have the binder of the original 150. Yes, I collected all the cards. Hopefully, knock knock, they will be worth something someday.
200 of them at one point. I sold them. I'm a stupid idiot for doing that. But
Oh, Joel.
Yeah, I did get like two. I think I got like $300. That was back when they actually appreciated in value. They don't do that anymore because there's so many of them.
Yes.
And they're all sold in packs. Now, back when we were kids, packs were like a myth, essentially. I don't know if you see them anymore in stores, but we sell them at our store. They're little novelty items that people can buy, and they're very popular. A lot of people do buy them, and you can also sell them to us either separately or in bulk. And so we get a lot of people selling them. And packs that are pre-made by the company and sold at a new price were not things that existed for at least a couple of years after they started being after cards separately started being sold. The most expensive one that I ever got was a very, very special Blastoise. I was trying to remember if it was Blastoise or Bulbasaur. It was Blastoise, and it was it was in a little bitty hard plastic little case. It was $90. That should tell you, like, they were expensive at one point, and now they're not, just because there's so many of them. They're no longer a novelty item. But yeah, I definitely own those original 150 because I collected all of them until a certain point, and more than even those. I definitely bought some packs when they started coming out, and so that's how my collection grew a little bit more. But then I sold them all, and I made $300, and I had $300 one summer, and it was great. But yeah, I should have kept those. So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So Joel made a dumb mistake. So yeah, I just remember back in the day, like, Pokemon was the thing. Like, if there's one thing that Joel and I could take away from our childhood, like, Pokemon was a good. It was a good, like, 5 years of our life as children. We're trading cards and all that stuff, and even playing the games. And I played yellow version, blue version, red version on the Game Boy. I was in it to win it. And so I've seen the movies. I actually went to the first Pokemon movie, or Pokemon the first movie, and that's where I got the Mew card. They were selling, or not selling, but they were giving away at the box office when you bought a ticket. Yeah, exactly. So that's how you collect the 151 cards. And so, yeah, when you hear about this idea, you're like, how is this going to work? So a couple things I took from it. One, I had no idea that Pokemon was a person, and they were and they were dating, and they decided to date Blade Runner and make a baby. That is not a bad thing, by the way, but I noticed that. I also noticed two funny tweets that someone put out.
Yes.
One of them was who got high and thought it was a good idea to let Ryan Reynolds voice Pikachu, and then someone replied, probably Ryan Reynolds. So that was pretty funny. And then the other one was I'm excited for Ryan Reynolds to voice Pikachu so he can make fun of himself in Deadpool 3 for voicing him. It's so great. And
It is.
I got to be honest with you, I like the trailer. I like the visual look of it. It looks like film noir mixed in with Pokemon and humans, and it couldn't be any more exciting to watch. Like, I thought it was going to look like garbage. I thought that they weren't going to put any care into it, but it actually has more noir look and feeling to it than the Happy Time Murders. Like, this is what I wanted the Happy Time Murders to look like. And so, and this is a kid's film. So, yeah, I think visually it looks fantastic. I think Ryan Reynolds' Pikachu is funny. I like it. I actually think the CGI for the Pokemon are not bad. Like, it actually they look pretty realistic, and they actually blend in with the world pretty smoothly. They don't seem really out of place or anything. The Jigglypuff, the angry Jigglypuff in the middle of the trailer was hilarious. Yeah, it just looks like a really good family film that's actually going to have some care behind it and some actual craft in filmmaking in terms of cinematography and visual effects and acting. So yeah, I really liked it. So
I fear, though, that this is going to be an enormous flop.
It probably will.
Yeah, because it's the second weekend. It's the second weekend in May. It's from Warner Brothers, right?
Yes.
And they just flailed about with King Arthur in that same weekend.
Like
And
to be clear
and
though,
it was
this
right
movie.
after a big, Marvel movie, and then this is going to be right after Avengers 4. So
True, but
I don't
this
know.
movie's gonna crush overseas. Like if
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah, for sure.
overseas,
Yeah.
this movie's gonna bank. But Joel's talking more domestically, which I agree with him. I don't think it's gonna be as big of a hit here than it is gonna be like in Japan or China or even parts of Europe that are still Pokemon heavy over there. So, yeah, I like the trailer. I thought it was gonna be garbage. I was not really looking forward to it, but you know what? It surprised me. So, the last trailer that we're going to talk about. It's not really a trailer, but it is what it is. But this is Pixar fashion. They do a teaser. They do a teaser that's filled with a joke, and then be like, it's coming next year. So that's basically what we have here is an announcement trailer saying that Toy Story 4 is coming. And this one, with the plot synopsis, this is just weird. Like when you go on IMDb and like you start reading this stuff, you're like, is this really what the movie's about? So when a new toy called Forky joins Woody and the gang, a road trip alongside old and new friends reveals how big the world can be for a toy. Why is this name Forky? So why can't it be like Stan or something? So, yeah, it's just an announcement trailer. It's a joke with all the characters, holding hands, twirling around in a circle in slow motion, and then Forky's just like, I'm not supposed to be here, and then,
Oh man, you're underselling this, but go ahead.
okay, so I mean, it's a funny little gag. I would,
It's so
I'd
much
rather, I'd rather see like an official trailer, but I understand this is how Pixar does it, and of course they released like a second teaser the following day, with which I liked a little bit better, with Keegan Michael Key and Jordan Peele voicing two like stuffed animals and like making fun of Toy Story.
I actually hadn't watched that. I forgot to watch that one.
Yeah, that one was pretty good. I like that one. And I'm not saying these are bad jokes or whatever. It's just, this is how Pixar does it. Now, am I excited for a fourth one? I'm still on the fence about it. I'm still with the mindset that like Toy Story 3 was pretty perfect to where I didn't really need to see one. And they've gone through a lot of changes and development. Since Toy Story 4 was announced. I mean, Rashida Jones and her friend Will Packer, I believe, they were assigned to write it, and it was going to be more of a romantic comedy involving Bo Peep and Woody. Now it's more along the lines of a road trip with Forky now, so they've gone through some change. I'm sure it will be great because, Pixar, 95% of the time they do very well, and they've done very well with the Toy Story franchise. So I have hope. I want it to be amazing. Do I want to see it though, or do I even want it in general? Not really. But the teaser trailers were funny little gags that I think is a good thing to put in front of friends and family when they see Wreck-It Ralph 2, and they'll get excited for it. So that's just kind of my thoughts around that.
You're so underselling this. It's not just that it's a funny gag. Somebody was pointing this out, but I didn't need him to point it out to notice this. Forky is literally a fork with some what's that stuff? Oh my gosh!
It's like a
This
felty like wiring that you can like bend and like
felt, it's something wire, and I forgot what I know. It's not felt wire, but it's something else. Anyway, basically glued onto him with a bit of gum at the bottom of the thing, gluing on shoes, I think. And it's basically a little creation that's not an official toy, and so it's an interesting twist because what we know to be alive toys, because of how the series has gone, is official toys from toy makers. So now we know that just random toys that are made by kids out of nothing, in particular, are also sentient. And so now you have this great gag where there's a big happy circle, and then you reach the thing that's not an official toy, and it's having an existential crisis. It has no idea what it is, where it is, what's happening, or why it's in this circle. It has no idea why it's there. It doesn't want to be there, and it runs away. And it's absolutely terrified of its existence. And it's absolutely hysterical. I was rolling on the floor laughing. This thing is a great teaser to introduce us to the personality of that character, and without telling us why he's there. But unless you look at the synopsis, but people who don't look at the synopsis are obviously going to wonder why he's there, and they're going to be intrigued by this little, existentially terrified thing that is a random creation of a child. And so I think that you're way underselling it, that it's just a gag. I think there's way more going on there by the fact that he has the reaction that he has to being in this circle. And so that's my take. I think that it's hilarious, but I think it also shows Pixar's commitment to kind of this halfway point between comedy and sincerity. That was genuine terror, and it's going to be interesting to see the movie try to explore that. And I have a feeling that what this teaser is telling us is that it's going to do that. I think that it's going to explore that in this character of Forky. Funny name, kind of a silly premise. From what I understand, from what Tom Hanks said, he was destroyed by the ending of the screenplay. So that's really interesting to me. I mean, we don't get any indication of that here, but it's very interesting. So yeah, that's my take on it. I think that there's more going on here than just a gag, at least under the surface. So anyway, that's my take on it. Any thoughts there?
No, I mean, I still want to see it just because it's Toy Story, and Toy Story is also one of the.
Do you get what I mean though? That there's more going on than he just doesn't want to be there. There's existential terror in that response.
Yeah, and I get that.
That
and
reaction.
I totally get that, and it actually does play out when you word it like that. It comes off as a very hilarious kind of observation, because we know that it's just a fork with some stuff glued on him, but he is alive, he is a breathing thing, and he is freaking out, and that's why we're kind of drawn to it. I totally get it.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and jump into our main review. Which is, of course, for Instant Family. I'm just kidding. No. Our main review is for Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, and this is the second film in the Fantastic Beasts series, which itself is a spin-off of the Harry Potter series. And it follows Newt Scamander, the meek but capable magizoologist who helped to cause a lot of damage to New York in the last film, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. And now we find him kind of getting in trouble for that. He's got two choices. Either he can join the Auror office with his brother Theseus, played by Callum Turner, and Newt is played by Eddie Redmayne. I don't know if I actually said that. Anyway, he can join the Auror office, or he can lose his license to travel abroad. And on one condition, he can help find Credence Barebone, who was the troubled young wizard from the first film, raised by an anti-wizard cult, and discovered that he is an Obscurus, who, to remind people of what an Obscurus is, it's a dark force that builds up in repressed young wizards that explodes and then disappears, often killing the host. He's extremely powerful, though, and he survived the attempted killing of him at the end of the first movie. That is one plot, and I'm going to move on to the other plots.
There is a lot.
There's a lot going on here. Meanwhile, Gellert Grindelwald, the dark wizard of the era, and perhaps the darkest and most powerful wizard of all time, is amassing followers by way of his very suggestive qualities. And the government of Britain wants his old friend and possibly more Albus Dumbledore, who's now a Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher at Hogwarts, played by Jude Law. They want him to fight him, but he refuses. Meanwhile, Tina Goldstein, the ex-Auror, played by Catherine Waterston, has gone off to find Credence as well, to try to save him. And Queenie, played by Alison Sudol, and Jacob also return. Jacob's played by Dan Fogler, who's obviously delightful. They don't have much to do until the climax, but yeah, so that's pretty much it. Tina comes upon a lead in the form of a French African wizard named Yusuf Kama, played by William Cottlam. Um, and meanwhile, Grindelwald, played by Johnny Depp, uh, is kind of just doing his thing. He's being evil. He's trying to convince people of his vision of the world, and that the Muggles need to be ruled by wizards. That's his opinion. So there's a lot going on here. I will hand it over to Chase to give his review.
Okay, so as you guys know, I'm not like the biggest Harry Potter junkie. I like the series. I have only seen the movies. I've never read the books, and I didn't really care for the first Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I don't know. It felt off to me, even though it is David Yates, and he at this point has directed 6 of them, and so you feel like that magic would carry over. Literally and figuratively, the magic of this franchise. And it does in some regards because it's David Yates, but in other hand, it's just like, I don't know, I wasn't really feeling Newt Scamander as a main protagonist, and, with the whole 2-hour plus runtime of finding creatures across New York City, I don't know, it just wasn't for me. But I've told you guys a million times, I was excited for The Crimes of Grindelwald. I love the trailers. It looked like it was going to take more of, this epic approach, show a lot more within this prequel universe, and, show us Dumbledore, go back to Hogwarts, have all this stuff kind of going on and kind of elevate the kind of character growth and arcs that we have set the groundwork on for the first one. Okay, so before we saw this movie, it was a little concerning reading the reviews of almost everyone kind of just bashing this movie, and I was thinking to myself, wow, is it really that bad? Because the first one did well amongst critics and audiences and the RT scores and everything, and I was just like, wow, what is so wrong with this one? And Joel and I's approach is that I will never just totally slam a movie and give it a D or an F if on a technical front, if there's still if the cinematography is still good, production design, visual effects to some degree, costuming. A movie has to be a complete failure for me to completely just bash it, right? So The Crimes of Grindelwald. So we saw the movie. I don't really know if I like it or if it's just okay. I don't really love it. It is a movie that definitely ups its game in terms of story and plot threads. Like Joel said, it's a very beefy movie. And that's kind of its downfall. I would say the biggest problem with this movie is probably just its script. I think a lot of people are too harsh on it. I've seen way worse this year, trust me. A lot of people I've seen will comment on it being a mess. I can't really disagree with that. There is a lot going on, and it does feel slow sometimes, and it feels like it's taking forever to get to its point, i.e. Credence's identity. That took a whole 2 hours and 20 minutes to figure that out. I don't know. I'm kind of rocking on 2 different grades right now, but they're going into 2 different grade ranges. So I don't want. Okay, let me just talk this out. So I will say that David Yates, what he does well, the director, is that he is able to still kind of capture this really nice world building in this universe. I still feel like that I'm in some type of wizard movie whenever David Yates is behind the the helm or whatever. Starting with Order of the Phoenix, and then doing Half-Blood Prince and both of the Deathly Hallows, and now the Fantastic Beasts films, he still has a creative touch when it comes to the world building, the use of magic, and make you really feel like you're watching these real things happen. And that is really hard to do in the fantasy genre, and I think he does that. Like, he makes you believe that these people are casting spells out of their wand. And I think on a visual front, he does it once again. And when you're dealing with a prequel franchise, you're dealing with a lot of stuff from the 20s and stuff. And so it does have a different look to it in terms of costuming and city look and production look, because obviously it's not set in the same time period as when Harry Potter took place, but I still think he does a great job establishing some type of atmosphere to these movies. I also think the acting is quite good. There's not enough of Jude Law as Dumbledore, but I think he does a great job setting up these kind of building blocks for his character later down the road, which is also, going back to other people's points, this is just a setup movie. Once again, can't disagree with you. It basically is just a setup movie for the other movies, but so was the first one, so I don't understand that criticism unless it was just, not really going anywhere. There was stuff still revealed in this movie. I just thought they took their time, which they shouldn't have done. But going back to the acting, I think Eddie Redmayne is better in this one. He still can't look people in the eye when he talks. That's still kind of bothersome. You have Catherine Waterston. I think she does solid work. Everyone here, including Johnny Depp, by the way, even with all the stuff that's been about him in the press and everything, leading up into this movie, has not been good. And so, I think a lot of people will go into that mindset and just wanting to hate him. I'm going to separate the art from the artist in this case and just judge him on how he does his Grindelwald. I think he's menacing, and he has that type of abrasiveness as a villain that I'd like to see, and like he's threatening. I mean, he kills a kid in this one. He kills a family in this movie, and that's pretty menacing. He doesn't really have any empathy or anything, so I think he delivers that pretty well. So once again, acting fine to good. I enjoyed it. The visual effects work, I think, is good for the most part. The creatures, more Fantastic Beasts, are pretty well done. I think the green screen work, I'd say like 95% of the time, is pretty well handled. There's a couple spots here and there where you're just like, okay, that's an actor in front of a green screen. But once again, I still think an overall good job in terms of a VFX look. Okay, so here is where people are having the complaints, and this is where I kind of need to talk out my thoughts and feelings about it. Is the script? There is a lot that goes on. A lot of it takes its time building up to the ultimate reveal at the end. I am going to say I wasn't not entertained by what I was watching, but they could have easily shaved this movie down. It did feel a lot longer than the first one. There was a lot to kind of take in terms of information. Every single character had some type of backstory or some type of, arc that they were doing, and I appreciate that from a growth perspective, but it did feel like it was just too much all at once, and that's where the messiness kind of comes from other people. I liked, some things with Credence and his backstory. I thought that was pretty neat. I had no idea about that. And stuff with Joel, who is Zoe Kravitz's character?
Lita Lestrange.
Yes, she is Lestrange. I thought, her backstory was pretty interesting. So like I said, there's interesting little stuff that you can kind of pick from this sandbox, and me being not a hardcore fan, I appreciated. I don't know how someone like a Joel or someone else that's a hardcore fan, I don't know how they would appreciate the information, but I do like some of the stuff that was revealed. But yeah, I just think what it comes down to is it was way too long. They should have shortened it, got to their point faster, and maybe, I don't know, it's tough, because when you announce that you're doing 5 movies, obviously the first and the last movie are going to be more important than the middle ones, in a way, because I don't know. It's weird because you're trying to get to a certain point, but this movie, it has its reveals, it has its twists and turns, but then when the movie ends, you're like, okay, well, I see where this is going, but why couldn't we get to maybe some of that instead of not really? I don't know. It's not a bad movie like people are claiming it to be. I'm not going to just lambast it, but I'm kind of like, is it more of like a B- or more like a C+? Because on one hand, it's not a complete failure in terms of a film. It's just not, and if you say that, then you're lying to yourself. I think it's mainly just script problems that people are having the main issues with. So I think the more I talk about it, I really don't want to watch it again, and that's kind of sad given, the franchise history that it has and everything. So I'm going to give it a C+. I'll give it that plus because, I do like some of the aspects about it in terms of a technical standpoint and some of the character stuff. But for me, it was kind of like a whatever movie. And it was definitely too long. Or in some ways, it just felt long because of all the stuff that was happening. But definitely some parts they could have picked up on. So that's kind of how I feel about it. Maybe as the franchise goes, it will get better for me. And this is for me, not for other people. But it's also one of those things to where I am a completist, and I hate that I am. So I will definitely finish this franchise because I'm sure Joel and I will talk about it on the show with you guys. But I'm not looking forward to it. So that's kind of where my head's at. I'm just kind of all over the place with this movie, kind of like the movie itself. So C+ for me. Oh, and also, I think my favorite part, and I've heard some people mention this, but not a lot, is the score. The score is amazing. There were several times where, they go back to Hogwarts and you have the classic, Harry Potter theme, and there was a couple parts with Joel, who's Dan Fogel's the blonde chick that he's with.
What? Okay. Queenie.
Queenie, yeah. I've seen the movie, guys. Trust me. So Queenie, there was one.
He's lying.
I know, right? There's one little bit where she's searching for Jacob, Dan's character, and there was this really kind of like haunting, ethereal type of score that was playing underneath, and it really kind of got to me on a musical front. So yeah, the score is amazing. That's probably my favorite part about it, especially with the opening sequence accompanying like the fast, exciting editing with Grindelwald and everything. So, like I said, some great stuff, some not so good stuff, but I think people are a little too hard on this.
All right, guys, it's what you've waited for. It's my review of Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald.
Here we go.
You are correct in that it's not a disaster or whatever. I think that people are overstating that. Especially, I hate saying this because it's like a conspiracy theory, but it's just my feeling that they kind of put it in their targets because of Johnny Depp's casting. And so there was an element there where they just kind of didn't want to like it just because of that. But there's also the movie to contend with, and it kind of confirms a lot of it's not very good, unfortunately. This is the first time I'm going to be giving a negative review of a movie in the Harry Potter universe. So I'm going to start with the stuff that I like, and then I'll move on to the other stuff. So the stuff that I like is entirely surrounding Grindelwald. I think that Johnny Depp is very good here at conveying sort of a cold playfulness at the edges of this character. He is famous for having had fun with a lot of the stuff that he did, all of the atrocities, and the opening scene is his escape from the American Ministry of Magic. And it's kind of murky. It's all in darkness, of course, because they transfer him. They're transferring him to the British Ministry of Magic, to the French Ministry of Magic, in the dark. But anyway, it's a great scene because it showcases his insane magical prowess. He's infinitely more powerful than Voldemort was, which kind of makes the irony just greater, all that greater that in the book, they don't do this in the movie of Deathly Hallows, but in the book of Deathly Hallows, when Voldemort visits Grindelwald in Nurmengard in his cell, in the book, Voldemort kills him, which is kind of ironic and fitting that one Dark Lord would kind of end the reign officially and literally of the other. And so anyway, so it establishes his insane amount of power. The difference between Grindelwald and Voldemort, I'll just say quickly, is the fact that Voldemort really only had reign over maybe a small portion of Europe and all of the UK, whereas Grindelwald has traveled the world and caused fear across every continent. And that's because he's so powerful. He is merciless in that power, and he's studied in it. Voldemort is more desperate and is able to control it because of that. But Grindelwald knows more and has a deeper knowledge, and so
it's almost like a great way to compare it is like Darth Vader compared to like a Kylo Ren, where it's like one is very good at what he does, and then one is just trying to copy. Like, hey, I'm the angsty like type of teenager. That's what Voldemort always appeared to me, and Grindelwald does kind of highlight like just how disastrous he is compared to him. So yeah, that's a great point.
To bring another series comparison into it, Grindelwald is Sauron and Voldemort is Saruman. Sauron, of course, is the big one, the one who created the ring. Saruman is one of his henchmen, and is incredibly powerful. He's sort of the same as Gandalf. He's kind of eternal, and Voldemort is incredibly powerful, but Grindelwald is insane. He's people don't. I think I've said this before. People don't know what they're in for, who are going to stick with the series when it comes to Grindelwald. He's something else. So I like all the stuff with him. I guess if we were to do a spoiler, I don't think that we have time for a spoiler segment, but I would definitely get into that final reveal if we were. I'll get into that with you offline. But anyway, so I like all of that because I think that it establishes his threat very well, and I think that Depp is good at conveying a lot of that. And I think that the stuff with Credence has some interest in it, particularly when they get together over the course of this plot. It's Rowling's best work in this movie, and that includes the stuff with Dumbledore. I'm including that in this particular plot thread because he's part of the campaign to try to get rid of, or try to fight Grindelwald and defeat him. And Jude Law is good. He's got a too brief appearance, but he definitely hints at the something more between them from their kid days or their youth. And yeah, so I like that a lot, and it's well performed. It's well executed in terms of the visual components. The special effects in this movie are great, especially when it comes to that stuff. That opening scene is thrilling. All right, so that's the stuff that I like a lot, and there are little parts about the other stuff that I like, but man, it's those 28 other subplots that are that are going on that are really, really kind of frustrating. So we have, and a lot of these are kind of dependent on that last reveal, which is why it's such a bummer that I can't talk about it. But anyway, you have like the thing with Leta Lestrange. The entire point of her character is to inform Credence's past. That's the entire point, which is kind of a bummer because the last name is the last name of the woman who kills Sirius Black in the Harry Potter series and is a major follower of Voldemort. So there's clearly history there. And we get some of that in a flashback, but it's kind of muddy because I'm not entirely sure who's who in that flashback. the main point of the flashback is to tell kind of the fate of one unseen character and confirm the fate of another, and ties in directly to the final reveal. Now we have to talk about Queenie and Jacob, who literally have nothing to do except for walk around and talk about their feelings for each other and how they've kind of shaped to be frustrating to each other over the course of the past few months since the end of the last movie, when she reinserted some of the memories in him after he had to be obliviated and all that. They don't have anything to do until the finale, and I feel like because of that, the bite of the finale and the relationships that are kind of rent apart because of that don't really have any sort of weight to them. And then you have the subplot involving the French African wizard, which once again kind of doesn't really come to anything because of the Lethal Lestrange character's past being tied to the reveal. So there's just way too much going on, and I feel like what Rowling has kind of done to herself is write herself into a corner in certain ways. There's too much that she's trying to establish for the next 3 movies in the series. There's not a lot of those where it seems like anything actually happens that isn't undone by the final reveal. And without getting into it here, I will just say that I feel like the final reveal is kind of having everyone on, or leading everyone on. It's one of those movies where it feels like nothing of tremendous note genuinely happens except for the fate of a couple of the characters. But even those, I just, where the lead of the Strange character goes, for instance, we barely got to know her, and so it just doesn't feel like the whatever might happen to her, to that character, doesn't carry any weight. And I just constantly felt like I was being shortchanged in terms of the drama that Rowling was attempting to establish in this movie. Just doesn't fit for me. The technical aspects are all on point. It's a well-produced movie. It's obviously the great cinematographer Philippe Rousselot is once again in charge of that part of it, and he's a long track record of great work in the French cinema field. He has his roots in the French New Wave, which is really tremendously formative. He goes back to the 60s. He's an older gentleman, and he does great work here, establishing a visual tone that I think is really satisfying and all of that. It's beautiful to behold sometimes, and like I said, the visual effects are great. The score, as you said, it's great. It doesn't sound anything like the John Williams score, except for the couple times that it calls back to it. Like with the, when we re-enter Hogwarts a couple of times, once in the relative present, once in the past, and you get some name drops, so you get the fan service stuff, but particularly one of the people that we see at Hogwarts, that's nice, but. Yeah, it just feels like there's so much going on that Rowling doesn't really know what story she wants to tell, because believe it or not, I haven't even talked about Newt, and that's because the movie kind of pushes him off to the side. He's a main character only by default here. He doesn't have really, he reacts to a lot, but he doesn't have the active participation in the plot like he did in the last one, or by the end of the last one. Here, he just kind of reacts to a lot, and then he's going to be, on a journey in the next one. I'm sure he's going to have a more active role, but considering what happens, but it just feels like a lot of stuff that it's telling us, and showing us and establishing for the next movies. And you're right. I mean, obviously that has to happen because it's a series, but it can be like a Harry Potter movie where it doesn't feel like it's establishing plot points for the rest of the series. It doesn't have to feel that way. So, and it feels like a bit of a struggle to get through it. I'm kind of making the movie sound worse than it is. It moves along nicely, I guess. It does feel a little long just because of how much is going on, but it does move with urgency. Um, when it finally gets to the urgent parts of the story, but it also builds like a traditional mystery and all that. But it's so frustrating to try to follow all of these threads and realize that I, a mega fan, had trouble following all of the threads. Um, it's a lot to keep up with, and I think that people who are not more than casual fans um, of the series, and that includes people who don't care about the series, are not going to find anything here that would make them want to go on to the next one. And that's a failure. And I think that because it needs to be, to some degree, it needs to be intriguing enough to non-fans that they would want to, for instance, go back and watch the first one. And also then watch the Harry Potter movies if they haven't seen them. So, I'm certainly still interested in this series. I don't want to make it sound like I'm not. I'm a Harry Potter fan for life, and I will always be that. I think that it's a great series. I think that there's a lot of stuff here that will happen that is gutting and tragic in kind of a Greek way, but particularly between Dumbledore and Grindelwald. But that's the thing, is I don't know why she decided. Now, I clearly see this. I probably should have before this, but I don't know why she decided to tell this story through the eyes of Newt Scamander if in the second movie in the series she was going to kind of shunt Newt Scamander off to the side, because it still makes Dumbledore and Grindelwald side characters. They're barely in the movie, but they're the subject of the movie. So, it's just it's a screenplay problem. It absolutely is. I'm blaming Rowling for this. I think that she misstepped in how much she wanted to present to us. Maybe to some degree she's more comfortable doing 7 parts of something. Maybe she should have plotted it out like that. I don't know. Maybe this should have been a novel. Maybe she's more comfortable there. Because I think that this could make a great novel. Everything fleshed out, hundreds of pages, because she doesn't do short books. That would have been interesting. I think I would have liked that a lot more. Even if the plot points were as is, if we had more behind them, then we might care more. And it was difficult to care about the characters who were not Dumbledore and Grindelwald. And even though that's the series that we're getting about them, she's put a lot of emphasis on these other people, and she doesn't really do anything of note with those until the end, until that last scene that it's all about that last reveal, and in a way that was kind of it kind of alienated me, and in terms.
Joel, are you there? Joel, are you there? It seems like Joel has it seems like he's gone. Let me let me call him back. But I mean, from what Joel, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, you cut off for a good 30 seconds. So continue your thoughts, sir.
What was the last thing I said?
You were about to wrap up, and just saying you felt alienated and just almost like just a turn off for you as a fan.
Yeah, basically, well, as in terms of an emotional reaction, I'm still interested in the series. I'm still in this story. I think that it's an interesting one, but it just in this particular presentation it doesn't work. So that's my thing. I'm giving it a C. I'm going even lower than you are, which is weird. I think that you even were like, wow, what if I like this more than Joel? last week, but it did happen slightly. Um, so yeah, it was a big letdown. And I'm just gonna throw this at you. I'm gonna keep my extra review until next week, just so that because of our internet thing, we're not totally trying to like capsize your internet connection.
Yeah,
Because
yeah. I don't
I
want
have a
to.
feeling it's
I don't want
no,
to
no, no.
rush your.
What I'm saying is I'm rushing myself.
No, no. I'm saying I don't want you to rush your mini review because that movie is amazing, and I want you to take your time with it. So,
yeah.
yeah.
If
So
if we can figure out some way of actually having good internet next week, I will review Widows. I'll just say that I was going to review Widows. People could probably figure that out because I actually referenced it in my Oscar beat as having seen it, and I hadn't talked about it yet, so people probably know that that's what it was. And I will just talk about that next week, so you know that that's one of my extra reviews next week. So, anyway. In the meantime, we'll just kind of hurry through this. I will have Chase over there guess the top five at the box office.
oh, this is so awful. So I know for sure Harry Potter, or not Harry Potter, Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald is definitely number one. If I had to say what number two is, oh, this is tough.
Oh yeah, your guess is your other thing is Instant Family came out this weekend.
That's right. Okay, so I'll go Fantastic Beasts, Bohemian Rhapsody, Instant Family.
Remember what came out last week?
I don't. Oh, I don't remember.
Okay, that's fine.
I know
We didn't review it, so
Oh, I'm such an idiot. Okay, Fantastic Beasts, Crimes of Grindelwald, The Grinch, Instant Family, Bohemian Rhapsody, and then maybe I don't want to say the other ones because I'm sure they flopped. I think number 5 is probably Widows because it didn't really do that well, and I think it might have squeaked in there at number 5.
You got all of the movies correct except you switched two. So,
no! I almost did
it. But you get like a 95. I'll just give you
Oh, man. I almost had it.
Okay, so yes, number 5, Widows. It kind of underperformed. It made $12.3 million on a $42 million budget. Not great news for Fox. It's one of the best films of the year, guys. I'll just kind of give that away, but and I'll get into that later next week. But yeah, it's a great movie. It deserves more than that. Number 4 is Instant Family, with 14.7, also an underperformer. Now here's the amazing thing: it's a $48 million movie. I have a feeling it's because of Mark Wahlberg. That's the case. Yeah, so it would need to make at least 100 million, I would say, maybe more than that, to break even. But it's not looking good. Oh no, I'm sorry, like 150 million. It'll have to make about that. And then number 3 is Bohemian Rhapsody. It dropped from number 2, and it made 15.7 million. So it's made 127.9 domestically, 384.3 worldwide on a $52 million budget. It's a big hit. Kind of wish it wasn't, but whatever. Dropping from number 1 to number 2 is indeed The Grinch, $38.2 million for a total domestic gross of 126.5 and worldwide 151.7. Kind of underperforming in foreign markets, but it's a $75 million movie. This is doing okay. It just seems to have broken even. I think it'll do well, though. It's certainly climbing. And finally, yes, Fantastic Beasts was in fact number 1, although it underperformed because of its budget. It's a $200 million budget.
Oh my God.
Which means that it's going to have to make about $600 million. That's, so it made 62.2 million domestically this weekend, and it made 253.2 worldwide. So not a great opening. I'm hoping that this doesn't mean that they don't go forward with this series. We'll have to see how it does. But anyway, that's the top five, and then really kind of a bunch of stuff underperformed. Overlord fell big time. It fell from number 3 to number 8. It fell 62%, 3.9 million. I mean, it's only it's a $38 million movie. Yeah, it's not a great hit. Let's see, what was the other one? Oh, Venom had its first really big drop, fell 60%. It fell out of the top 10 finally. It made 210 so far. It made only a 1.9 million this week. But the big rise, whatever, is A Private War, which found its wider release this week and rose 268.8%. Now, it didn't make very much per theater average, only $838 per theater, but still, it made $725,000 this week. So, I guess kind of impressive. Otherwise, though, even like, Can You Ever Forgive Me fell. The Hate You Give fell big time. Even Free Solo fell. A lot of stuff fell this weekend, and it's kind of a bummer. I think the overall like percentage thing was only 0.6% or 1.6% raised over in terms of the entire raise from last weekend, and that's not very good. I always try to keep a track of that, and it's usually above 10%. So in any case, that is the news. Next week we are reviewing Creed 2, which is self-explanatory, the sequel to Creed, and I'll have a couple of extra reviews, including Widows. And then the next week after that is our lists of the worst films of the year. We're doing it at the beginning of December, and then, of course, at the end of December is our list of the best. So a good little month and a half or so coming up here. I'm really excited for it. A lot of shows in between those. A lot of shows in between those, let's just say. I'll just say that. So, Chase, where can people find you on the internet?
The internet, indeed. That would be Twitter at Real Chase Lee. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can get other reviews that I might not do here, but that will probably change next year. Hint, hint. And then, of course, for this podcast, whether you're listening on CastBox, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, wherever you get this podcast from, please, share it around and let people know this is the Definitive Movie Podcast, but maybe not this episode because it's we had technical difficulties and we had to rush a little bit. So, I'm a little embarrassed by this episode, I'm not going to lie. But I think we did good for the most part. I just wish...
I do want to say, we didn't even talk about this. R.I.P. to Stan Lee.
Yes.
A major... I know that Chase has been weeping all week, I'm sure, off and on. It's a big death. It's a very significant one. So anyway, just an acknowledgement of that big, very, very big thing that happened there. So.
Yes, condolences to his friends and family. Definitely a huge loss within our community. But and then for this podcast, we have our own Twitter at Real Me and Movie Podcast at Real Me and Podcast. Go follow us on Twitter because that is where we post stuff. And then I believe that is it. Do what? Joel? Joel, are you there? Oh, his connection was lost. Yeah, this is quite awful. Definitely an off episode, but that's okay though. We just want to make it super fun, super fresh, exciting. You guys don't really know where the show is gonna go. Before Joel, all right, Joel
Hello?
is back. Good old connection again. So, Joel, I flipped it over to you, and then you just went away. You quit and you left life.
I was just going to say that y'all can follow me on Twitter at Real Joel Copling. Follow my website, Joel on Film. I should have my reviews for this weekend up by tomorrow. I just finding it harder and harder to actually post on the weekends. It's hard. Anyway, and on Letterboxd at J Copling. So sorry for this episode, guys. This is weird. We're gonna have to figure out some way of I don't know, updating the internet somewhere. It's unfortunate, but this is what happens.
Yep, it's that's what I was just telling them before you came back on. It's a live show, anything can happen, but that's what kind of keeps this podcast awesome. You're right. It just you never know what's going to happen, even for the worst. Sorry for the short episode this week, but we did go over an hour and we gave you guys some good content. So I hope it was satisfactory. And next week we'll come back bigger and better. So we won't have any missteps again. So apologize once again. Completely embarrassed, but hey, that's what happens when you put yourself out there on the internet. So this has been episode 254. Fantastic piece, The Crimes of Grindelwald. Please let us know down below what you thought of the movie, and then we'll see you guys next week for Creed 2 on another episode of this wonderful movie podcast. That is Joel over there. I am Chase. Let me play the outro music. We will see you guys next week.
Bye.